Welcome to Storming the Field. This is a bonus episode. Our guest truly, really doesn't need any introduction. He played 16 years in the NFL. He's a household name, and he's a commentator for ESPN now. And he has an incredible comeback story that's fueling a very special mission on this Veterans Day. Let's welcome in Alex Smith. Alex, thank you for being with us here on Storming the Field.
Yeah, good to be here.
And let's talk more about that initiative. You're calling for a national movement to truly connect with a veteran. How did you get involved with this cause?
Yeah, this really goes back and starts with my leg injury, and listen, at the end of my career, I, suffered a pretty traumatic leg injury and almost lost my leg and my life for a little while. And again, I was not in a great state for a long time. There weren't any examples for me in the sports world to look to of someone that had gone through something similar and come back. And the closest examples for me of anybody coming back to success was in the military. And I was lucky enough as a civilian to get granted access to military medical care, and specifically to go down to the top rehabilitation clinic in the world when it comes to leg injuries. And it's called the Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio, Texas. And it changed my life. To get to go down and rehab alongside our service men and women who have literally sacrificed life and limb for this country, to see their resiliency and courage up close, to have shared struggle with them, who had very similar injuries to me. Listen, it's the first place that I ever said out loud that I wanted to try and play football again. And I got to go down there over the next 2 years, and there's no doubt that I never would have stepped foot on the football field again if it wasn't for that place and the people down there and that shared connection. And so for me, again, when I needed them most, the military stepped up and made a connection with me that again, I'm forever grateful for. And this is really about flipping that around. Obviously here with Veterans Day and celebrating our veterans. So often as civilians, I know the feeling. We don't know what to say or do. And again, so often we just fall back to thank you, which is nice, but really this is about more than that, right? This is about, again, going out and an engagement and making a connection with veterans in our community and welcoming them into our community, right? And letting them know how much we value them. And again, that we can do better and need to do better, and not just on this Veterans Day, but certainly here going forward.
And you think about it, Alex, during your rehab, during that entire process, it's not about the words that are said. It's about that presence. It's about that time that they spent with you. And that's what we're asking, is to truly connect, spend time, because think about all the sacrifices they made for us. I actually went to college for athletic training and physical therapy. So I think about your injury. I think about that recovery process. And there's such a mental toll on that. And for veterans and for athletes that go through a struggle like that, where you start to look at not only is your career over, but you had talked about, yes, yours was life-threatening at one point. Oftentimes, we are so consumed with our job, whether it's as an athlete or if you're in the military serving, and you think your life's over after an injury. You persevered through all of that. You became the comeback player of the year. You played again in the NFL. Can you talk about something that inspired you or your message to those, whether they're in the military or ex-athletes or just truly anybody listening to the podcast, about overcoming that adversity?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. Listen, all the focus was always on the physical, right? My leg and the physical rehabilitation and what phase was I at. The mental journey was so much harder and more meaningful for me, right, to come back. And that's certainly what I think the folks down at the Center for the Intrepid and in the military meant to me, right? It was the mindset towards the struggle, right? The shared experience, doing it together as a team. No one does anything great alone, right?
Yeah.
And again, I felt alone prior to getting down there. And again, to get to be a part of that team for a while changed my life. And I think that also leads to this. Again, these are our veterans were part of the greatest team in the world, right? And so often they're transitioning back to civilian life and they feel isolated, right? And this is about, again, welcoming them back into our community, letting them know how much we value them. And again, it can be just from simple connections and a cup of coffee and a meal, or going and volunteering at a veteran clinic. And again, what you can do in your community. There's some amazing resources at usaa.com/Veterans Day for all the folks out there. If you're wondering what you can do in your community, go check it out. A bunch of answers on there. And again, it is about that. You said it, like, no one wants to feel isolated. Transitions are hard as our veterans transition, again, out of service and back into civilian life. That is difficult. And what can we do as a community to help in that situation?
Such a powerful message. And Alex, while I have your time here, I mean, you are an amazing quarterback. We think about your years in the NFL, 16 years, and we're a weather and football podcast. I want to get your insight because you played for the 49ers, you played with Kansas City, and you think about some of the different weather games maybe that you were a part of. Is there one that kind of jumps to your mind where you had to battle those conditions?
Oh, yeah, of course. Not so many in San Francisco.
Yeah,
There's a lot of sunshine, a lot of sunshine here. But absolutely, when I went to Kansas City, a ton of weather. I mean, whether you had the big thunderstorms in the summer and training camp, obviously into winter, then when you're dealing with ice, polar vortexes. I do remember a game there that, obviously I started and played in that was, sub-zero temps. The field's, a frozen rock. It's failing the field test before the game. Like as a quarterback, it's someone that handles the ball every play. The ball is an ice cube. There were just so many different weather conditions that you had to get good at as a quarterback, dealing with that, day in and day out, wind, sleet, all those things. So it's so funny, when weather would come up, I think a lot of the guys were resorted to being kids, and it was fun to play in the snow. When you're a quarterback, it's not the same, right? There's a lot of anxiety over handling the ball every single play, and weather oftentimes poses such a huge challenge in that.
Yeah, there's so much pressure on you. You don't get to take a second off. Some other positions you could maybe try to warm up a little bit. You're getting a play call. You're obviously calling that and making those adjustments. I was looking it up because I remember you were talking about how cold it was. I was thinking 2013 AFC wildcard game. You were in that. Temperatures plummeted below zero because of the wind chill. And like you had said, it's difficult as a quarterback because the ball is a rock at that point. You threw for 378 yards and 4 touchdowns. Incredible. Now, Alex, you are an ESPN commentator now. Are you still in tune with the weather? I feel like you have the ability to now pass along that knowledge to a massive fan base that's trying to understand why it's so difficult to battle those conditions.
Yeah, it just came up this last weekend. Listen, obviously the Detroit Lions went to Lambeau Field to play the Packers, and we're dealing with a lot of wind and rain, right? And there was a lot of question marks about Detroit, and here's a team that plays in the dome, and how are they going to play outdoors, right? How is Jared Goff going to be able to handle the weather when he hasn't practiced in it that much? You saw him go to 2 gloves and actually played unbelievable. Given the conditions. And it's funny, the team that is used to it, the Green Bay Packers, actually struggled with ball security. The receivers struggled catching the football in the weather. And it does obviously have such a big impact in football, and that's what makes football unique. Obviously, take lightning out of it. You play through everything. We saw it last year with the Kansas City Chiefs and playing in that crazy temperature game that was sub-zero. And obviously, you have a team from the Miami Dolphins who play in good weather, having to deal with those kind of circumstances. So it is unique to football, and obviously I think which makes it really special.
It does make it special. And I remember that game. We actually had some fans that sadly had to go to the hospital because of frostbite. So it's important, whether you're playing in it, watching it, or you're going to those games, be prepared for the weather. We've taken up some of your time, but we appreciate this time with you. NFL quarterback Alex Smith, and more importantly, a man who's on a mission to help our veterans. Alex, thank you for joining us here on Storming the Field.
Yeah, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.